I was shocked about this topic you did about Stormy Daniels. You talked about how she
Hmm.
was arrested in Columbus in 2018 at Sirens for illegal sexually oriented activity in a sexually oriented business. Will you tell everybody about this story? I thought this was crazy.
Yeah, this was the Columbus Vice Squad who was incredibly corrupt and actually was disbanded because of how bad it was. And they had gone in, and this was definitely politically motivated because it was Stormy Daniels, and obviously she has a history with Donald Trump.
Hmm.
They go in, the police go in undercover to, she was touring strip clubs. She's not from Columbus, but she was touring strip clubs, doing her thing. And the cops were there, and she, they were kind of, doing things that strip club patrons do. And she was rubbing up against them, which is what, dancers do sometimes. And she was arrested for that, along with a bunch of other women that were dancing there. And that was, the case was thrown out, but that just shows you what was going on with the Vice Squad and how political it was. And, Vice Squad's typically them and internal affairs. Internal affairs often are people that had gotten caught and then they become internal affairs investigators. At least it used to be. But Vice Squad, you're dealing with drugs, prostitution, and gambling. So you've got a lot of corruption there. Especially back in the day. But these guys were really bad. And then they were they picked up Stormy Daniels on this no pun intended trumped up charge.
Right, right. And it says here that she sued the four cops and the city paid her $450,000 for wrongful arrest. Is that,
Yeah, yeah. Yep,
that's
yep.
crazy.
So yeah, I mean the Vice Squad was costing the police department also so much money too. Yeah.
Speaking of the vice cop, Andrew Mitchell, the cop that
Yeah.
was a suspect, whatever happened to him?
Oh, he's in jail. Yeah.
He was
No,
in
he's
jail.
in prison for a long time. For he actually didn't. He got off on that murder. That so what happened was he was a corrupt cop. He would pick up women and who were sex workers and say, I can arrest you or you can have sex with me, which is rape. So he would do this to women. He picked up this one woman. He drove her to the back of a alleyway and drove really close up to the a brick wall. So she couldn't get her door out. The passenger side was up against a brick wall. She
Mhm.
couldn't open and get out. So she's trapped. He's not in uniform, so she thinks she's going to be killed because obviously there's people killing sex workers out there. So she takes out her knife, stabs him in the hand, and then tries to escape into the back seat so she can get out the other way. He takes out his gun and shoots her 6 times. And he got off on that, which is insane. But he's gotten caught for a lot of other things.
He got
So
off on it on what? How?
on what on saying it was, uh, because she stabbed him first.
Got
So
it. It was
self-defense. Yeah.
self-defense. Wow, that's incredible. All right, what are some so I just want to get back to the sex workers and the drug fueled issues that go into this in middle America. And it's similar to the Gilgo Beach killings
Hmm.
because that was sex workers as well. Um, I I think that's interesting because that's in Long Island, which I mean, still connected to New York. It's not like middle America where like drugs are, I think, more rampant than in the outskirts. But like, is drug issues? I mean, is that happening everywhere now? Is this just
Every,
happening more and more?
everywhere. It's happening everywhere. Yeah, we are in such a crisis of monumental proportions, and you see it, and it's also with the fentanyl. It's a lot of times it's poisoning more than it
Mhm.
is an overdose. They'll call it an overdose, like, but there was that story of the four comedians who were out in LA. Three of them died. They were doing coke, and it was laced with fentanyl. You're seeing, so before it used to be, don't do coke because there's going to be fentanyl in it. Now it's never take a pill unless you get it from your doctor. So
Right.
if you're at a party, and there's so many stories of young kids who are at a party and someone's like, here, take a Xanax, here, take a Vicodin, and they take it, and you think a pill, oh, it's got a stamp on it, it looks like it's official. No, it was made in somebody's basement, and they're adding fentanyl to it because it's cheap. So these kids take this, and it only takes a little bit, and then they die.
Right.
And you know, it's something that we're seeing it happen. We're shrugging. There's been a lot of, it's not a, you know, when it comes to true crime, it's not a sexy story.
Mm,
Uh, you know, people in true crime want serial killers. They want, you know, but this is the ultimate serial killer here. This is killing more people than anybody.
right. Yeah, it's very scary. Um, okay, talk to me about some of the cases that people have heard about, like the Iowa four, the murders
Hmm.
there. Or any thoughts on bigger crimes right now there that we're not seeing something that you might see?
Yeah. Well, the thing with what's happened with the glut of true crime
Hmm.
is, you know, so, and let me take you back like historically a little bit. So,
Hmm.
you know, true crime really, I mean, listen, true crime is old as history. You know, the Bible starts with a true crime story, you know, but we've got, so people were always interested in murder stories, obviously, with the Penny Dreadfuls in the 1800s. It got bigger, and the Old West stories, which were kind of true crime. Then it was the pulp magazines, which were really geared more towards men than to women. If you take a look at the old ads, they were for things like Be Taller or, you know, Charles Atlas ads, that kind of thing. Then it became these paperback books like Anne Rule, Stranger Beside Me, the Ted Bundy, you know, so, and then it switched more towards to females. And like my mom used to read those books all the time.
Hmm.
So then you've got, so it was always under the radar for a really long time, and you had ID and everything, but really, it the OJ trial was a tipping point. So the OJ trial introduced forensics to everyone, and
Hmm.
everyone's like, "Wow, this is really interesting." Forensics. Obviously, it was a huge case, devastating case. It had a celebrity. It had a pretty white girl who was the victim, which is a theme that you'll see throughout true crime.
Hmm.
So that whet the public's appetite, but it still was not ready to go mainstream yet. What happened in between was CSI and NCIS, like those, and Law and Order. So those procedurals, everybody got really into that for a really long time. And then you had ID, and it was still very much under the radar. Then Making a Murderer came out. Well, then for Serial came out first, then Making a Murderer, and then it exploded. So now you've got all of these podcasts, all of these Netflix. Everybody ran to it. It goes in waves. Netflix. A lot of them don't want to do murder anymore. They want to do scams. They want to do like you know, people like con artists, that kind of thing. Anything that's
Hmm.
kind of duplicitous or whatever, unless it's a big murder. Now we've
Like the Dirty John cases, stuff like
like that,
that.
yeah, that kind of stuff. So um, you see those cases, and you don't. What you've got now is you've got all of the crimes that were always the big, when you think about the biggest true crime stories in history. You know, number one that's been written about the most is JFK, but let's put that aside for a second, and the Bible stuff. But the is the Manson case, and then you've got OJ and John Bonet. You
Hmm.
know, all with a white female victim. You know, that's usually what's going to sell more than anything. That's just the way that everything is, which is unfortunate. So, but we've gotten to a place where that's why Bundy, everybody, you know, was such a big case, and they're still making movies about this schmuck to this day. When you get to, we've made so many stories and so many movies and documentaries, you're running sort of out of crime. So then when a story happens like the awful case in Idaho, where you do have white female victims, everybody's going to jump on it.
Hmm.
So with that guy, uh, you know, you're going to see a lot of shows about this guy. There's going to be very little information. I don't think he's going to talk. And that's what you're seeing now. It's just everybody wants the the serial killer, everybody wants the criminal to be a guy that talks.
Hmm.
They don't talk anymore. You know what? BTK used to write letters, and then he talked a little bit. Obviously, Bundy represented himself. Berkowitz used to write letters. Zodiac used to write letters. You know, but when it comes to, you know, Long Island, we just solved Long Island serial killer. This guy hasn't talked. Golden State Killer, this guy hasn't talked, and they're not gonna, you know.
Hmm.
So it's there's a lot less to work with. So when you get a guy like Idaho, keep it, little drips and drabs are going to come out and come out. But as far as it being like a big series or anything like that, people will make it, but it's not going to be that interesting.
But
And that's where we are right now.
yeah, the court of public opinion obviously has already deemed him to be the killer. Do you think he's the killer?
I mean, I haven't listened to all the evidence. It looks like it's pretty circumstantial at this point. I'm an Occam's razor guy, so I'm always going to say, listen, bottom, it's probably the killer. They knew that everybody was looking at them on this. They knew they had to do something. They had, they put a lot of manpower and on this case, so they have a lot of evidence of. Seems like a lot of the evidence is the cell phone tower evidence, but
Mhm.
I don't know if they've got DNA or anything like that, so I can't really speak on that.